Are you stuck in the same old routine at work? Do you find yourself hitting a creative wall, unable to see beyond your current perspective? It's time to break free and unlock the power of fresh perspectives. David Guthrow back with yet another, I know I keep saying that, but each time it is another episode of Discover Fresh Perspectives. And today I have the pleasure of having a conversation with Nathen Aswell. Welcome, Nathen.
Thank you so much, David. It's a great pleasure to be here with you.
So Nathen, you said you want to talk a little bit about your experience on the Camino and even beyond that, some of the changes that it's made in your view or outlook on all kinds of different things. But let's start out for those people that have maybe heard the term Camino or the El Camino or El Camino Real down in San Francisco or in California. What is the Camino? And maybe you could just say a little bit about that and some, because I know there's different Caminos as well. So maybe we could start with that.
Sure. So the Camino is actually several routes, pilgrimage routes that cross Spain and culminate in a town called Santiago de Compostela, which is in the upper northwestern corner of Spain, where it's believed that the bones of St. James the Apostle are. And so it's a major pilgrimage point, has been since the Middle Ages, and kind of fell by the wayside, just what we all know about this world, the way things of that nature have kind of fallen away in terms of importance. And there were a couple of individuals, I believe in the 50s, who decided to kind of put more effort into restoring the trails, increasing the markers on it, just making it basically more attractive for people to do that. But I would safely say that most people in North America, myself included, became aware of the Camino or those series of routes by the movie made by Emilio Estevez and Martin Sheen called The Way, which was released, I think, about 15 years ago now. And in it, very quickly, the plot is about Emilio deciding to walk the Camino, and he dies on his very first day. The main route, the route that most people travel is the one that I did, the French Camino. It starts just inside the French border. On the very first day, you cross the Pyrenees Mountains, and then the rest of the trip you are walking west across mostly the northern kind of edge of Spain. So Emilio's character dies as he's crossing the Pyrenees because of bad weather. His father decides to travel to the beginning point where his son's body is returned. The son's body is cremated, and he decides to walk the Camino in his son's memory. And in so doing, ends up having his own spiritual experience. So the movie is very much about that and depicts many of the places along the route. And I was quite taken by that. And, like most people, put it on the quote-unquote bucket list and said, I have to do that one day. And then a few months before I turned 60, I was visiting my mom, and I was watching Castaway, movie with Tom Hanks.
Oh, yes.
Which I'd seen in the theater when it first came out, 2000 or whatever the heck that was.
That's where he talked to the coconut or something like that?
To the volleyball. Wilson! And so the gift of watching that movie again was, it just really landed for me, there is no time like the present. And it just brought the Camino back to my mind, and I thought, well, if I want to do this, what am I waiting for? So my 60th birthday present to myself was to walk it. So
let me back up just a little bit. So just to give people a sense of scale. So how long is the Camino, either in miles or kilometers?
Right. Basically, it's about 775 kilometers, the one that I did. It's one of the longest ones. There are some shorter ones, and there are a few longer ones. But as I said, the reason why the French Camino or the Camino Francais is the most popular is because it has the best infrastructure. It's quite easy to find accommodation, a very cheap accommodation, I might add, all the way along. So it's you can do the entire experience for very little. And it's also, for people who are doing the Camino the first time, it definitely has its challenges geographically speaking. But because the infrastructure is so good, you can really meet people from all over the place. And it's quite extraordinary the way
So
that happens.
I'm going to keep interrupting
Of course.
because my listening skills are terrible. I'll probably talk about that later. But you had it on your bucket list, and I'm sure there's other things on your bucket list. Why was this particular thing on your bucket list?
Wow, David, that's a very good question. Well, I'll just go with my gut and say that my spiritual journey has been the cornerstone of my life, and I knew that I didn't walk the Camino as a Catholic pilgrim. That was not my desire. I did think that it would be a spiritual experience, and it did indeed turn out to be one. I would say, in a nutshell, that the experience was a walking meditation. How many of us, when we decide to vacation or take time away from what we normally do, spend 6 weeks to have an experience? Very few of us. So basically it took me about that, a little less than that, to walk the Camino. And every week, that meditation, that inner silence that I was hoping to experience, deepened. And it was profound. Just very profound.
And Nathan, was that a function of the walking, of the time, of the reflection, of people you met on the walk? Some combination of that, because I can imagine there's a number of different contributing factors. Weather, so many different things that would contribute to the deepening.
Wonderful question. Yes, I would agree with you. I was blessed. The weather was mostly on my side. I had very few days of rain, which is great. I went in September. Because I wanted to avoid, they say that spring and fall are the best times to go, because summertime, of course, is when it's hottest and when most people are on the routes, including a lot of Spaniards. It's a very popular thing to do, either the whole thing or parts of it. So definitely the weather played a part. I would say absolutely that the people that I met were a very important part of the experience. Let me just say something about that in a minute. But to answer your question most directly, the simplicity of it. Every day was wake up, walk, rest, eat, sleep, repeat. And just the beauty of that, putting my pack on at the beginning of the day, 6 a.m, and thinking, I have no idea what's going to happen today, who I'm going to meet, where I'm going to go, how far I'm going to get. And it was all taken care of. There's an expression related to the Camino, which is the Camino provides. And I can give you so many examples of that. Things happening. One that just pops into my head as I say this. I remember one day walking with a friend that I'd met, and all of a sudden this local man who's driving by stops his car, rolls down the window, hands us both bottles of water, says "Buen Camino," and leaves. That's what happened all the way along. We felt very loved and supported and respected in our journey.
I can imagine I mean, I don't know who listens to this, but I imagine there's some listeners that, when they go on a vacation, they want everything planned out to the minute. Right. We're going to see this episode, we're going to go, or this experience, we're going to stay at this hotel and things like that. And they're probably just shaking, right? Just listening to you talking about, we'll see what the day holds, which to mention beautiful.
Not to mention, I walked on average, about 20 kilometers a day. That's not what people would consider a vacation. Vacations tend to be opportunities to stop and rest and relax. And there's no question that the walking took quite a toll on me. I made the cardinal sin that most people walking the Camino make the first time, which is I took way too much with me.
Oh,
there's a fellow named, unfortunately he passed away recently, John Brierley. He was an Irish man, was a businessman, who I think sometime 20, 25 years ago decided to walk the Camino, changed his life. He quit his job and just became an authority on all things Camino. And one of the things that he wrote in his definitive guide is you should take about 1 pound for every 1/10 of your body weight should be how much you're carrying. And I basically took twice that much. So that ended up having quite an impact on my experience.
So this may be a little bit of a divergence, but when you took too much, I wonder if that's also a metaphor for
Completely.
too much that you took with you, like spiritually or whatever as well.
Absolutely.
Maybe if you could talk to
Absolutely.
that, that'd be
Yeah.
great.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's one of the things that I don't think it was John Brierley who said it, but someone said when you walk the Camino, you pack your fears.
Hmm.
What if I need this? What if I need that? And the reality is you're walking across a country that has supermarkets and grocery stores and pharmacies and all the rest. So there's no need to do all that. But you don't know that going the first time. So I don't know if you're aware of, his name escapes me, Rick Steves, another travel guy. He's written many, many travel books. And I love this. I've said this many times. He says that the second trip that you take is the one that you wanted to take the first time.
Interesting.
So I'm planning on going to do my second Camino this September. And I know it'll be a completely different experience because of all I learned on the first time.
So, you talked about different things that you ran into, like this fellow that gave the 2 bottles of water. Are there any other things that you're willing to talk about that were transformational? Is sometimes too strong a word, but really caused a shift in the way that you thought about things or believed about things or anything like that?
Absolutely. Well, 2 things come to mind. The other story that I wanted to tell you along the lines of the water bottle. There are many places along the route where you'll turn a corner and there will be a table set up outside someone's home with all this food and a sign saying donativo, donation. You leave whatever you like and you take whatever you want from the table. That happened many times. But there was one morning, and I don't know, I guess I was just feeling quite spent this particular morning. And I turned around a corner and there was this beautiful man, just this sweet, sweet man who had a table like that. And when I saw him, it brought tears to my eyes because he was in the absolute perfect place for me to stop and to take advantage of what he had set up. And all the food that he had out that was available, as well as just his demeanor, his energy, was just it filled me so much in every way. Physically as well as spiritually and emotionally. So there were many, many moments like that. But to answer your question on another level, and I love sharing this story, my belief is that manifestation, let me just say this and I'll explain it. If we are present, there's the best way to say that. If we are present, the time between expressing a question or curiosity or a desire and its fulfillment can be instantaneous. And probably most of the time is, but we miss it because we're so busy running around doing whatever we're doing. So the 2 examples that I love to share of that from the Camino that really brought this home crystal clear for me. There was one morning I was walking and I was thinking about, I have been a professional musician most of my life and asking that question about abundance and, what are my gifts and what can I offer? And I thought about the fact that I consider myself, and other people have told me I'm a good listener. And I thought, well, maybe there's something about that. Maybe monetizing my listening skills would be something I should pursue. So I swear to God, David, not 5 minutes passed when I turned this corner and I was doing some stretching at the time, and this gentleman appears, excuse me, who turned out to be a professional speaker from the NSA, and I won't say his name, but we started talking and, sharing a little bit about each other. And after about 15 minutes, he spoke nonstop for between 2 and 3 hours until we got to, a place where he went his way to have lunch and I went my way. And minutes after he went his own way, I looked up at the sky and I went, okay, I guess that's really not what I want to do then. Thanks so much for giving me an immediate answer to that question. And the other example I love to give is I was walking along on another morning, afternoon actually, pondering relationships. I was single at the time. and thinking, do I want to be in a relationship? Do I want to be in a relationship? What is my path moving forward? And again, a very short time later, a woman whom I'd already met, a young woman named Judith, a German woman, about half my age, appeared. And by that point, everybody that I'd met on the Camino, I would speak to them for about 5-10 minutes. And then I'd say, okay, well, I guess I'll see you later, because I was walking more slowly than everyone else. And she said, no, that's fine. I'd love to walk with you for a while. And the gift of that day was, what I remember most fondly was walking with her and appreciating the shared silences we had. There was no need to fill the silences with words. So we were in silence, we were in words, and it was just very natural and very comfortable. And I thought, that's what I want. That's what I want. That's what I'm looking for, that kind of quality of relationship. So,
I was just thinking about this morning on the way into work about, I recently connected on Facebook or something like that with someone that I'd known from my high school days. Well, actually, I'd even known him longer than that. And we played in a brass ensemble. And, unlike so many, and I played trombone at the time, and unlike so many other things like in band and things like that, where you're trying to be heard, in a brass ensemble, the key is to really listen, because if you don't listen, you can't blend. I mean, you have to be able to play your own instrument. But in order to make beautiful music, you have to listen so you can blend.
Yep.
Right. And that listening is so important, and to be comfortable in silence. And something else that occurred to me, and I'm just trying to project if I was going on the Camino for the second time. One of the things that I would, want to somehow pack is trust, and trust in myself.
Yep.
And maybe, I don't know, trust in the universe that, everything that you need is there if you're willing to listen and trust and be okay with uncertainty and without having plans and things like that. I think it's a fabulous metaphor.
That's the perfect metaphor, David. That's exactly what ended up happening. In fact, I can still remember the very first moment that lesson presented itself. And it was right at the beginning of my trip. So my route was, I flew to Paris, and then I took the train from Paris down to Saint-Jean-Pied-de-Port, St. John at the foot of the bridge, which is the beginning point of the French Camino. And I'd been in touch with a woman who ran an albergue, a hostel in that town. And we were communicating back and forth. And, she said that the front desk closes at 9. But the earliest I could get there was after 10 p.m. And so I was experiencing some anxiety about that. Would there be someone to greet me? And it was the only place on the Camino that I booked ahead of time. And because I was going to be coming in late, I didn't want to be waking up anybody else who'd gone to bed much earlier, yada, yada, yada. So, I have all my maps, and I'm, thinking, well, it's not very far to get from the train station to where she is, and I can do this. It's probably only like a 10-minute walk or something. I get off the train, and I hear this French voice, talk about tears coming to your eyes. It always makes me cry and make me think this. I hear this in this beautiful French voice, Nathen, Nathen. This woman who has come from the hostel to greet me herself at the train, put my backpack in her car, drive me the short distance, And in that moment, I thought, I'm going to be fine. I'm going to be fine. And every day was like that. There was magic in every single day.
So I don't mean to extract meaning from absolutely every breath you took, but
please do.
I'm wondering where one's willingness, fear is a word that comes up, and to be willing to walk with fear and be okay with that. And there we go. Just that's how you know it's a real conversation, because of all the tweets and twistles. I don't know what a twistle is, but where there's walking with you, if you're not pretending that there isn't fear, but just acknowledging it, and that and that sort of balance between fear and trust seems kind of magical in a way.
Yep. Yeah. And just the as you say that, what comes to mind is the mix between my solo moments and my moments of being with other people. That just one moment would flow into the next. You never knew from one minute to the next what was going to happen, who you'd be with, if you'd be stopping, who would stop if you stopped, and just yeah. So yeah, I completely agree with your metaphor. It was absolutely one of trust. Did I have fear? Sure, I did. Was I? I was really scared about. I got injured. I was walking in pain. There was a lot of what's that?
What happened?
Well, what happened was after the first week, I stopped at a post office and I mailed ahead some of my belongings to my end destination so that I would have less to carry. I felt so excited about the difference that I walked much quicker. Big mistake. I ended up getting a shin splint on my left leg. So after I don't know how many days of that, I stopped and got a shin splint that basically a brace to put on the splint. And then, of course, wouldn't you know, sometime later it happened on the other leg. And then I started having trouble with my right knee. So literally, there was a point on the trip where I would gauge which of those three was hurting the most, and that's where the brace would go. So I was changing the position of the brace every day, depending, or several times a day, depending on how much was hurting. Mm. And would I stop and take a day off? Oh no, have to keep going. So there's that, right? My stubbornness. But yeah, I look forward to. And there are several companies set up that will carry your gear for you to your next destination. But of course, I want it to be old school. I want it to, be completely self-contained and all the rest of it. But yeah, I am absolutely looking forward to walking it again and walking in a lighter way. And I mean that in every sense.
So at the risk of jinxing it, what possibly are some expectations that you have for the second trip that you may not come through with or may have to let go of?
David, that's a brilliant question. In fact, for the last year, one of the big things that I have thought about is the difference between expectation and intention. And realizing that I get into an awful lot of hot water with my expectations. I have very high expectations, and, expectations are very limiting things. So to answer your question more directly, what is my intention? My intention, I think probably the best thing I could say to you in this moment is to allow this Camino to be its own experience and not compare it to the one that I had. And that's going to be challenging. What'll probably help me with that in a big way is I'm doing a different route. I'm going to travel the second most traveled Camino, which is the Portuguese Camino. It runs north from Portugal to the same endpoint. And it's a shorter one as well. So, yeah, best answer I can give you.
So I'm putting myself into this situation. This is a therapy session for me, Nathen. Thank you very much for participating.
My rates are reasonable.
and I think sometimes where I get into trouble is when I think I know something, but I don't really know it. Right. How much do I take that knowledge forward, and how much does that get in my way of being willing to let go? What do I have to let go of? You talked a little bit earlier when we were talking earlier about pre-Camino Nathen and post-Camino Nathen. How would you describe the differences between those two? Both, what do you notice internally, and what might we notice externally? Who we knew you before you went on the Camino, and now what might we see differently?
Great question, and I'm so happy I have the answer for you. My son. There's a point on the French Camino called the Cruz de Ferro, the Iron Cross. It's about 2/3 of the way through. And it's a point where there's this cross that's been mounted in a kind of a small hill, I'll say. I don't know if it actually is a hill, a physical hill, or if it's a hill that's just been created by what I'm about to describe to you. At the Cruz de Ferro, people leave stones behind. They are invited to come from wherever they've come from and to bring with them something that they would like to release.
Hmm.
And so some people leave. When I got there, I saw some people had left, shoes, perhaps of a child they'd lost or whatever, but several stones. And I brought my stone from White Rock, and because I was living in White Rock at the time, and I thought a lot about what I wanted to release. And what I wanted to release was all thoughts of lack, all thoughts of not enoughness, And I remember it got to that morning, and thinking, okay, here it is. And I was holding the little rock or the pebble in my pocket, and I got there and I left it there and had tears. And interestingly, for about the next hour, that was right after that, I was then going down into the next valley. So for hours I was then descending into the valley. And for that first hour or so, I had about 2 or 3 enormous waves of tears. Something was being released. I had no idea what it was. But I would say at this juncture, to answer your question more directly, I really do feel like that prayer was answered. I do feel, and I'm certainly not free of that way of thinking, but I think it definitely had an impact on how I live my life and how much more I am welcoming abundance in every way.
So I'm just going to pause for a moment. And for those of you that are listening, if you imagine that you had that rock, what would you be letting go of?
Right.
Or what things and why you'd want to do that and what concern there'd be in doing that, but what might be freed up if you were to leave that rock behind. So just going to pause for a moment to give you a chance to think about that. Okay, cool. So Nathen, this is, I mean, the Camino in one way, yes, it was a physical challenge, but it was also a metaphor, right, for life and travel and things like that. And if you were to extrapolate your experience on the Camino to something bigger, to a bigger context, would there be something that this would apply to that you have, a different lens or a different sense of now?
Yeah. Before I answer that, I will answer that. I just wanted to add I was going to say the proof. That sounds like a funny way to put it. The manifestation of my prayer, my request at the Cruz de Ferro. 2 very big ways that I've noticed the change in my life is I am much more, I'm much busier in my musical life than I've ever been. And very shortly after I came back from the Camino, I met the love of my life. And there's no question in my mind that I met her because I had created space in my life for her to just come walking in. And so literally, the way I tell people the story is, this is about 3 months after I came home. I was setting up for a performance and she walked across the dance floor and my heart recognized her right away.
Wow.
So yeah.
Well, that's not a bad return on a little bit of pain of shin splints. Because maybe I'll just go back to that for a sec, because some people might have said, okay, I've gone as far as I can. This pain is telling me I should stop.
Right.
But what I realize I'm going back and forth here, but what kept you going in spite of the pain?
Oh, the people I was traveling with, my desire, my curiosity. But I think kind of, I've said I'm going to do this, so I'm going to do this. And I didn't have an open ticket to return. So, it was important that I get to the place that I needed to get to by a certain date. So that was probably doing that, pushing me as well.
So can I ask you a question about the second one?
Yeah.
Are you going to have an open ticket, or are you going to have someplace you have to get back to?
It won't be an open ticket. I'm not quite sure at this point. The tentative plan is to have my wife meet me perhaps somewhere in Europe and continue to have a different experience after I have cleansed my palate, gotten another spiritual hit. So So no, I don't think it'll be an open one.
Okay, well, make sure you don't pick up any stones on the way on the
Right.
second one.
Right.
There's no takebacks on those.
Yeah. So to get back to the question you asked me before I had to add something about the Camino, a theme that's really, really big for me is fullest expression. I'm always wanting to live my fullest expression. And a cute way that I remembered just in the last few days that I need to write a song with this title, and I will. You can hold me to that if you want to at some point. Do you remember kids' cereals? They would have prizes in them, and on the back they would show a picture of the prize, and beside the prize it would say actual size.
Yes.
I want to be I want to live my actual size.
Huh.
Kind of a cute way of saying the same thing, but I'm noticing that. I'm noticing that I am having moments of living much more my actual size. And I know that you and I have a good mutual friend in Andrea Menard. And so I was just in Edmonton performing in her very powerful show, Rubaboo. And we were speaking about the show before we began this interview and saying a few things to you about it. But that's one of the big things that I noticed in myself. The difference between our performances last year and this year. This year, I was much more my actual size. I felt myself standing taller and being much more present. It's all about presence, right? If it comes down to one word, it's really about being present. And I felt myself much more present in this show, which was a real treat. So yeah, I want to live my fullest expression. I want to be my actual size. I want to be as much in every moment as I can possibly be.
Well, this has been fabulous. I mean, it makes me think that maybe if my knees ever get better, maybe I can walk to the corner. But we all have our own Caminos.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Right? And,
Yes.
And so you want to say something before
I do want to say something. It's because the two things. One is, of course, it's not about the Camino. We can learn our life lessons anywhere, right? But I do want to say this for those who may be hearing this and going, gee, that's on my bucket list too. I wonder. I would like to say there are many ways to do the Camino. As I've already mentioned, there are companies who will carry your belongings for you if you really want to make that decision. It's easy to do that. But secondly, many people will walk a section of it. Mm-hmm. If they only have 2 weeks, they'll just do a piece of it. Or if they want to skip over some sections, they can bus or taxi or whatever. So there are many ways to have the experience. You don't have to do it in a 6-week chunk. If it's something that's calling to you, you can experience it in many ways. And the last thing I want to say for the people who may think, oh, I'm too old or I'm not in shape or whatever, the last day of my Camino, the last day as I was walking into Santiago Compostela, because I actually continued on after that for a little bit, was a woman who was walking in crutches, who had bandages from her hips all the way down to her ankles on both feet, both legs. And if she would have been walking any slower, she would have been walking backwards.
Uh-huh.
And I thought, well, if she can do it, anybody can. So don't let your physical ability or lack thereof color your decision. It can be done. If your desire is there, it can be done.
So I'm going to focus on the Camino just as a metaphor for a moment and think like there is a lot of peace and learning and growth and so many different things on the Camino. And I kind of wonder, metaphorically, if everyone were to walk the Camino, if we'd have more peace in our world.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Just to take that time out and be with oneself and not be about greed and accumulation and conquering and all those other kinds of things. That there's no room for that on the Camino. Yeah.
To reiterate something we've already said, how can I be most present?
Mm-hmm.
What can I do to make myself be here as much as possible? Ram Dass said it years ago, be here now. That's it. That's the whole ball of wax right there.
I was reading a book by Meg Wheatley yesterday, and she said, she wrote Leadership of the New Side. She's written about 10 books, and she has one coming out soon on Islands of Sanity or something like that. But she said, I think the time when we each have our individual mission and purpose and all these other kinds of things, that may be actually causing more problems than solving anything. Maybe what we should be doing is stepping back and saying, what does the world need of us? Right. And before we can answer that question, I think we have to know who we are so we know what we have available. So I realize that's getting a little bit philosophical, but I think those are the kinds of things we need to think about in this crazy world of ours.
Mm-hmm. And I think when we feel fed, when we feel grounded, when we feel present, we are able to do that. We're able to turn our attention outwards.
Yep.
Which, service is, it's the whole ball game. That's why we're here.
Nathen, this has been great. I've, learned about some more things, thought about some more things about myself, which is, I appreciate. And, if I have fun doing this and learn some things, to me, it's been a success. Beyond that, I hope that some of the folks that listen might have some ideas about what they might do differently, what their actual Camino or the metaphorical Camino is, where they can access some of the things that you did through your walk. So thank you so much for being here today. Thank you, Nathen Aswell.
My great pleasure. Before I go, Bob, David, let me say that I'd be happy to speak to anybody about this if they so desire. And my website is nathenaswell.com. They can find my make sure to spell Nathen with an E, Nathen. I'd be happy to speak to anybody about anything. And I'm excited about writing a book about my Camino experience. It's already been almost 5 years, but my heart is still there. I've just been so busy, it's been hard to find the time. And it will be an ebook. It will be a combination of, some of the lessons that I've shared with you this morning, this afternoon, as well as pieces of music, original pieces of music.
So, Nathen, I anticipate that some people will be listening to this as they're driving, speeding to work because they're not on their Camino. So I'll make sure that we have that information in the show notes, so no one dies in trying to find peace and tranquility after listening to this. So I'll make sure that goes in the program notes.
Thank you, David.
And this has been David Guthrow. Discover fresh perspectives. Come on back for some more next time. Subscribe now, because on Fresh Perspectives, every episode is an opportunity to explore new horizons and redefine what's achievable.